Tonight, the deadly trail of destruction as a tornado sweeps across a Texas town. The terrifying moments as the twister tore through, leaving much of the town in ruins. At least 3 people killed, dozens injured, more than 100 homes and other buildings destroyed. Dogs being used to look for survivors in the wreckage. Plus, the incredible survival, a sheriff's deputy and a motorist swept under, re-emerging alive from floodwaters. Also tonight, the man who shot and killed 11 people at a Pittsburgh synagogue, guilty on all federal counts, now facing a possible death sentence. The scathing new report of the Minneapolis Police Department, the Attorney General detailing years of excessive force and racial bias. Did that climate lead to the death of George Floyd? An exclusive interview with the widow of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who she blames in part for her husband's death. With sensitive documents in today's headlines, we remember Daniel Ellsberg, the whistleblower whose leak of the Pentagon Papers helped change the course of the Vietnam War. Priced out, high mortgage rates, low inventory. Now many can't afford to move, forcing others to put their dreams on hold. And 75 years of nightly news. Our look back as we move forward.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. As the people of Perrington, Texas survey the destruction and mourn lives lost from a catastrophic tornado, 31 million people in the South and Southern Plains remain on alert for the risk of more severe weather going into the weekend. 3 people died in Perrington, including an 11-year-old child. The Panhandle town struck by one of at least 10 reported tornadoes across 5 states yesterday. All day, search teams have been scouring shattered homes in search of other potential victims. Since Wednesday, there have been over 20 reported tornadoes from Texas to Georgia. 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts recorded in Escambia County, Alabama, while over a foot of rain has portions of northwest Florida under a flash flood emergency, and a separate storm system spawning violent weather in the east this evening. Let's get details from Sam Brock. Sam, good evening.
Lester, good evening. With all this destruction around me, the governor of Texas has issued a disaster declaration for this community where there are more than 100 homes, as you mentioned, that have been damaged. About half of those, Lester, are trailers, exposing the vulnerabilities of smaller cities. The torture of tornadoes came to Perryton, Texas, first with the sight of funnel clouds touching down, unleashing fury. Then the devastating reality for a community trying to process the unthinkable.
It's like a nightmare. It's something you see on TV, but you never thought you'd live in it.
The violent night leading to 3 confirmed fatalities, an 11-year-old boy trapped in a trailer, and 2 women in their 60s, Cindy Bransgrave and Becky Randall. Stephen Wade in shock. When you found out she was one of the 3 victims, what did you think?
Oh, there's no words. It's heartbreaking.
Such is the state of a city with just 8,000 people who are now reconciling 100 damaged or destroyed homes, 30 businesses battered, and a downtown that bears no resemblance to its former self. The tornado so powerful it managed to shear a wall of cinder block right off the side of this structure, while at the same time ripping the roof right off of this building. And this is just 1 block of Main Street. The Texas task force spent hours searching the rubble with canines, looking for signs of life or victims. 1 person remained missing, though, with at least 75 injured. In one of the hardest hit areas, this trailer park development. What's left at this point for your dad, for your father?
Just the pieces. Just the pieces.
Patty Videa says it's a miracle her father-in-law is alive.
He's okay.
He held onto a door that was torn off, then clung for life to a patio rail attached to this now frameless house.
And the only thing he could think of was to get beneath the patio, the metal patio frame that was here, and he just clung on.
Despite injuries to his head and foot, Ruben survived, and authorities realized he was the missing person they'd been searching for. A glimmer of good news for a region gutted by intense heat and unending storms. With Florida the latest victim. Late Thursday, more than a foot of rain pounding the Panhandle and killing 1 when a tree crashed into a home. And this dramatic video showing a Florida deputy diving into the floodwaters to rescue a stranded motorist caught in rapidly rising water. Relentless weather reinforcing for many here the importance of community.
We've seen everyone come together, and That's all I've seen since this happened, and I'm very thankful for that.
Sam Brock, NBC News, Perryton, Texas.
Also tonight, a federal jury in Pittsburgh convicting the man who killed 11 people in a synagogue on all counts, including hate crimes. Here's Stephanie Gosk.
Robert Bowers is guilty on all counts, including murder and hate crimes. A Pittsburgh jury convicting him for one of the deadliest acts of anti-Semitism in the country's history.
I thank our brave survivors for sharing their suffering so that we can protect against more suffering.
Bowers went to the Tree of Life Synagogue in October 2018 because he knew services were being held, according to federal prosecutors. He didn't come to worship. He came to kill, describing to the court with minute-by-minute detail how the gunman, armed with 3 handguns and an AR-15, turned the temple into a hunting ground. Bowers killed 11 people and injured 6, including 4 police officers. The government is seeking the death penalty. Among those killed, Bernice and Sylvan Simon, who were married in that same synagogue 62 years before. According to witness testimony, Bowers told police, "All Jews need to die." Rabbi Jeffrey Myers described the scene days after the shooting.
I heard gunshots, I heard screaming. I could tell that the shooting was going on in my chapel and my congregants were being mowed down.
Bowers' lawyers conceded most facts in the case, but they disagreed on the motive and are asking the jury to spare their client's life. In closing arguments, a defense attorney said Bauer was driven by nonsensical and irrational thought. In the wake of the shooting, Pittsburgh passed 3 new gun control laws, including a ban on assault weapons. But a Pennsylvania judge ruled that the city did not have that authority. Today, President Biden calling for tougher gun laws nationwide.
We will beat the gun industry. We will beat big money that sits behind them. And the politicians refuse to stand up and act.
As for this case, it enters the penalty phase, which could last weeks, Lester. The same jury will decide whether Bowers should be sentenced to death.
All right, Stephanie, thank you. 3 years after the death of George Floyd, the Justice Department tonight releasing a scathing report finding a pattern of racial discrimination in the Minneapolis Police Department. Shaquille Brewster has late details for us.
Tonight, a blistering Justice Department report delivering a second sweeping condemnation of the Minneapolis Police Department.
Such conduct is deeply disturbing, and it erodes the community's trust in law enforcement.
The 92-page report finding that the department uses excessive force and unlawfully discriminates against Black and Native American people, saying MPD used dangerous techniques and weapons against people who committed at most a petty offense and sometimes no offense at all, finding instances where officers used force to punish people who made officers angry or criticized the police.
The patterns and practices we observed made what happened to George Floyd possible.
The investigation was launched the day after the murder conviction of ex-officer Derek Chauvin for Floyd's death. Investigators interviewing thousands of community members and local organizations and conducting more than 50 ride-alongs with officers and crisis responders.
We understand that change is non-negotiable.
Listing 28 recommendations, including some reforms officials say are already underway. Now the police department will likely be placed under a consent decree, a legal agreement between the federal government and city to enforce changes, as some community members say they are coming too late.
Why does it take the DOJ pulling up with a consent decree for people to say something? Why?
And tonight, the Minneapolis police chief acknowledging the pain, anger, and frustration in the community, vowing more transparency and promising real change. Lester?
Shaq Brewster tonight. Thank you. Now to our broadcast exclusive with the widow of slain Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, weighing in on the deal between the PGA Tour and Saudi-backed Live Golf and what she says led to her husband's killing. Here's CNBC's Eamon Javers.
I can be assassinated at any time.
How do you live with that?
I live in a fear. I don't have a normal life.
Hanan Khashoggi says she lives in a state of constant paranoia, particularly because of her phone.
But we cannot get rid of it because the modern life, you cannot just leave your mobile phone and live without it, actually.
But it's a paranoid way to go through your life.
It is. It absolutely is.
Especially for a woman whose husband was so brutally murdered. A U.S. intelligence report found that Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman personally approved the killing and gruesome dismemberment of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. Bin Salman has denied direct involvement. Do you believe it was Mohammed bin Salman who ordered your husband's death?
I'm not sure about this 100%.
Today, she's more focused on finding out how the couple was allegedly tracked and targeted by the high-tech spyware she says played a role in his killing. What did that feel like to you when you realized that your phone was an open book for your husband's worst enemies?
I feel very sore. I feel very sore, but I don't have a guilt because I did try as much as I can to save Jamal.
In a new lawsuit against Israeli-based company NSO Group, Khashoggi alleges the firm's spyware program transformed her phones into handheld spies and gave Saudi agents key knowledge about Jamal obtained by NSO Group from Hanan's own devices. The company told NBC News it has not received the lawsuit and will respond accordingly. And although she blames Saudi agents for her husband's death, she says the joint venture between the PGA Tour and Saudi-backed Live Golf, which has been criticized in the U.S., doesn't bother her.
I would like Saudi Arabia not to be abandoned, not to be a pariah country.
You're okay with the golf deal?
Generally speaking, regarding the sport deal, I don't want Saudi Arabia to suffer.
She is seeking asylum in the U.S. for her own safety, but also pushing to ensure others aren't spied on the way she says she was. For NBC News, Eamon Javers, Washington.
Tonight, we remember a whistleblower who made history, Daniel Ellsberg, who leaked the Pentagon Papers exposing the raw truth about the Vietnam War, died today at age 92. Here's Andrea Mitchell.
Tonight, tributes rolling in for Daniel Ellsberg, the largely unknown Pentagon analyst during the Vietnam War, later labeled the most dangerous man in America by Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. All after Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers to the New York Times and later the Washington Post. 7,000 secret government pages showing the U.S. government had been misleading the public about the growing scope of America's role in Vietnam and that the military doubted its chances of victory.
I stole nothing. I did not commit espionage, as indicated by the Espionage Act.
It led to a landmark Supreme Court decision on press freedom that helped inspire a generation of investigative journalists. When the Nixon administration tried to stop the newspapers from publishing, the justices sided with the press, and criminal charges against Ellsberg were later thrown out by a judge, citing in part a break-in by the White House plumbers at Ellsberg's former psychiatrist's office, seen as a warm-up to the Watergate burglary that would bring down President Nixon. We interviewed Ellsberg just 2 months ago after he announced his pancreatic cancer diagnosis.
What you want your legacy to be, because you're thinking about that clearly.
It doesn't pay for me to think about legacy very much.
And also telling us, I'm glad I did it. Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
When we come back in 60 seconds, why it's getting so hard to find a home for sale. Finding a home for sale is getting tougher these days. Inventory is slim in part because mortgage rates are so high, and that's leaving some priced out. Emily Aketa explains.
It's okay, sweetie. It's okay. Ready? Go ahead, catch it.
Allison Brown and Larry Loveday purchased their 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home in Connecticut with a mortgage rate current buyers could only dream of.
With a 3.25 interest rate.
Between working from home and raising their toddler, the couple is looking to sell and buy bigger.
What would you like to do at this point? We would like 4 to 5 bedrooms with a finished basement. That would be our ideal home. I would want more space.
For your family?
Absolutely.
But with mortgage rates hovering just under 7%, more than double Allison and Larry's current rate, a move would mean payments the couple can't afford. Even if they were to purchase their current home today, they would be paying roughly $500 more each month.
We couldn't afford this house today.
With that 6 to 7% interest rate.
Yeah. This is a little hot.
And because they can't buy something new, they're not selling, putting them among the homeowners trapped in low mortgage rates and keeping housing inventory near record lows. According to the National Association of Realtors, the market is short more than 300,000 homes affordable to middle-class buyers. In East Haven, Connecticut, Joe DiNatale shares an apartment with his dad and has been looking to move out for the past 2 years, even checking home sale apps up to 10 times a day. How would you describe your home hunting process right now?
It's very frustrating.
Very frustrating. You get your hopes up for those houses and you envision yourself in those houses and then it falls through.
For those now looking for a new home, real estate experts say be prepared to offer full price for recently listed properties. Try to be flexible on a closing date and do the inspection, but be open-minded to taking on renovations, as higher mortgage rates are sidelining would-be sellers like Allison and Larry.
What's going to get you to get on the market, put your house on the market?
Lower interest rate.
But that's not likely coming anytime soon. Emily Ikeda, NBC News, Lisbon, Connecticut.
We'll take a break. When we come back, the milestones we'll always remember. A look back over 75 years of nightly news. Finally tonight, we want to recognize a milestone that those of us who bring you this broadcast are awfully proud of. NBC Nightly News is celebrating 75 years on the air. Over those many decades, the faces, the format, and look have changed, but not our commitment to all of you.
The Camel News Caravan presents Today's News Today.
Ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to you. Today, Dwight D. Eisenhower of Kansas took over the presidency from Harry S. Truman of Missouri.
Chet Huntley, NBC News, New York.
And David Brinkley, NBC News, Washington.
And this is NBC News.
Good evening. The essential facts are these. President Kennedy was murdered in Dallas, Texas.
Here is a picture of the swearing in of the 36th President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Perhaps 50 years from now or more, when people think of the past, they will look at the pictures from last night.
There were two presidents in the White House today, Richard Nixon on his way out, and our new president, Gerald Ford, on his way in.
Live from the Berlin Wall on the most historic night in this wall's history. America has been attacked, and it has been changed. This is the first great test of the new century for this nation.
Today, all you can see is the thick black smoke that is clouding the area.
This is the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division.
1 out of 5 workers are losing their jobs.
Good evening from a battered and soaked city of New Orleans.
We just need some help out here.
You do anything to help these people?
We have people coming to help us.
The oil is presenting yet another danger.
Barataria Bay. Its waters are vital to Louisiana's seafood industry.
A truly striking new look at Sandy's devastation. The hardest hit area continues to be the shoreline of New Jersey.
So many people depend on this boardwalk.
It's a dangerous canyon right now. We lost another soldier.
The last bastion of the Islamic State tonight is on fire.
How many shooting scenes do you think you've been to?
Since I started this, about 1,000.
At nearly 2 years old, Mariani has already witnessed so much death.
The power is now out. We were outside for a little bit. Know that we're safe. But we're going to have to sign off.
And that's nightly news for this evening.
Glad we could get together.
Thank you for the privilege of your time.
Of course, we hope to see you back here tomorrow night.
Good night, David. Good night, Chet.
For all of us here at NBC News.
Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Well, we want to thank all of you for your loyalty as we press forward. Join us Monday when the studio will look a little different. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. And once more, do take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.